Once upon a time, there was a plucky squire named Jot.
The Plucky Squire is a new Zelda-like adventure game that, honestly, from the moment it was revealed, the aesthetic alone got my attention. And after playing it through, I'm happy to report that the Plucky Squire is a straight-up joy to play. So let's talk about it. Hi guys, DPX here reviewing today, the Plucky Squire. Now before we get started, you know what to do. Be sure to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will trap you in my storybook. Starting off with the good, I alluded to this in the intro, but the first thing that you notice when playing the Plucky Squire is the aesthetic and the art style. And because of the story and how it's a literal storybook that you are playing, and every little detail, like as you leave the screen to go to a different part of the level, the book flips a page, I just love that. Plus, it's very aesthetically pleasing, as it just pops, you know. But the game doesn't just take place inside of the book, as you can actually leave the book and run around a whole desk, and now you're playing in a 3D game. And visually, the 3D sections look great too, and the game does a great job mixing the 2D and 3D sections together. What I mean is there are moments during the 3D sections where maybe there is like a post-it note that you can transport into and now you're in 2D. Simply just explaining it won't do it justice. It's something you really need to see, and hopefully I remember to put the right footage so you can see what I'm talking about. In addition to all that, the Plucky Squire takes a very unique approach to puzzle solving. Sure, sometimes you can just beat up a horde of enemies and then you find a key to unlock a door, but other times you could leave the book and manipulate the pages to go back to a different page and grab an item that you need, or one that I really like. There will be text that says, maybe for example, like, the bridge is broken, and you know, there's a bridge that you can't cross because it's broken. But if you attack the words, you'll be able to remove the word broken and maybe find another sentence that has the word fixed in it, and then you put the word fixed in the sentence, and now it says that the bridge is fixed, and then the bridge is fixed, and you can now, you know, cross the bridge and solve the puzzle. Like, that's solving the puzzle. Stuff like that is what I mean when I say that the Plucky Squire takes a very unique approach to puzzle solving. I also really enjoyed the story, in particular how meta it is. You play as Jot, who loves adventuring through his own storybook, and it always ends the same with him defeating the evil Humgrump. However, Humgrump catches on to the fact that it keeps happening over and over again and ending that way, and is trying to change it. I don't want to go further into detail because I think finding out how meta the game gets is something you should experience yourself, but it manages to do that in a way that is very endearing and not annoying. Like, some games can get really meta and in a very annoying way, but not this one. And as for the characters, you got Jot, who's the main character, and then you get his two companions, Violet and Thrash. And all of the characters are actually three-dimensional. Like, Jot is an adventurer, but he also wants to be a writer. Violet is a wizard, but she also wants to be an artist. Stuff like that I just found really cool. There are also these really cool mini-games in the game that I thought were neat. I wasn't following the trailers leading up to release, so I don't know what was revealed beforehand, so I won't get into detail, but the mini-games were a lot of fun. And maybe you aren't the biggest fan of the mini-games, but, you know, they thought of that as they gave you an option to skip the mini-games. I also really like the music, as it fits the game very well, and there's even narration throughout the game that adds to the charm. And speaking of which, the last thing in the good is that the Plucky Squire just has a lot of charm and character. It can be funny, like one of the first bosses in the game is a honey badger, but it's literally a badger that likes honey. Stuff like that just adds a lot to the Plucky Squire. As for the mixed, one thing I feel like mentioning is the dialogue can go on for a little too long. It's not too bad, but there is no auto advance, so you're kind of just mashing A when the dialogue is done, and sometimes they get their point across quickly, so maybe you just start mashing A to move on with the game. Another thing I'm mixed on is there weren't really a whole lot of bosses in the game To my memory, there are only like maybe 3 or 4 that felt like legitimate boss battles. And sure, the game is more on the easier side of things, so the boss fights weren't difficult, but that's not what I was talking about. Maybe if there was even just 1 or 2 more boss fights, the game would have felt slightly better structured. But it's only in the mix because it's not something I even noticed until writing this review, so it clearly didn't bother me too much during the game. As for the bad, the only thing worth noting was I ran into some game-breaking bugs and glitches. They weren't too bad and too frequent, but they were game-breaking. Meaning, like, I had to quit the game and start again. Luckily, the game autosaved, so I didn't have to redo a whole section or anything like that. There are other games where that happens, but just going off of the footage that you saw or are currently seeing of the camera just bugging out, there were glitches like that where I couldn't do anything, like pressing the buttons like that didn't do anything. So the only thing I can do is pause the game, quit to the main menu, and pick up where I just was. It didn't happen too much, like, at all, but if it happens at all, I can't not mention it.
Thrash looked on in shock. What was happening in his homeland?
Despite some bugs and glitches here and there, and some other minor issues, the Plucky Squire might just be the indie darling of the year. Rarely does a game's aesthetic and the creativity in it sell me on the game alone, but the Plucky Squire gives me reasons to keep playing as it uses the creativity in its art style and aesthetic and translates it to the gameplay better than I could have possibly imagined. Not to mention, the fact that this game manages to be both a 2D adventure game and a 3D adventure game is honestly insane, and maybe even a technical marvel, especially for an indie game. In the end, I'm gonna give the Plucky Squire a 9 out of 10. So yeah, I really enjoyed the Plucky Squire. I think this game is, like, you should definitely check it out. It's on everything. It's free on PS Plus, you know, on PS Plus Extra, so it's a no-brainer. But otherwise, what do you guys think of this game? Do you guys like the Plucky Squire, not like it? Have you guys played it, not played it? If you haven't played it, do you guys want to play it, not want to play it? Anything about the game, let me know down below. Anyways, if you like the video, come subscribe, or I will trap you inside your own, or no, it's my storybook.